Rabbi, you're muted.
Oh, okay. You hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm sorry about that. Okay, so good morning, everyone, and welcome. Good to see you, Michael and Lynn and Marty and Karen and Mrs. Goldschmidt. And I see Diane is joining as well. We are ready to begin. If you're able to mute yourself. And like I mentioned earlier, I think this class will maybe be a little bit of a shorter class. So let's see how it goes. Okay, we are ready to begin. The Parsha Vayera, another beautiful, beautiful Parsha. Beautiful Parsha. If you have the Gutnick Chumash as we have over here, it's on page 94, 95. It begins with the story of Abraham. We're continuing the life of Abraham, our forefather, the beautiful, rich life of Abraham. Just a beautiful read. And as we like to do, we try to give a synopsis of the Parsha, and we're going to discuss really an idea that we touched upon last week about Avram being an influencer, Avram having positive influence on others, and we're going to try to understand the idea of the sensitivity to others, the caring about others, putting yourself aside for another person. So that's what we're going to discuss after we give a general overview of the Parsha. So the Parsha begins with exactly where we left off at the end of last week's Parsha. Avram has circumcised himself. He's at the age of 99. At the age of 99, he decides he's going to give himself, or God instructs him and he agrees to give himself a bris, give himself a circumcision. And obviously, he's weak, he's ill, and on the third day, he has a visitor. And that's where this Parsha opens up. Vayera elav Hashem be'eloine mamre. That God appeared to Abraham. He was sitting in the plains of Mamre, and he was visiting. God visited the sick. You know the mitzvah of visiting the sick. God himself visited the sick. When it says in the Talmud that we should try to be like God, it says just like God visits the sick, so too we should visit the sick. Here we have a beautiful thing. God comes and visits Abraham. Now, we are told that why was Abraham sitting? And the verse concludes that Abraham was sitting at the entrance of the tent. So it's explained, why was he sitting at the entrance of the tent? Because Abraham loved to have guests. He was someone who he had to host. He couldn't go by a Shabbos without any Shabbos guests around his table. He couldn't go by a dinner without inviting others to eat with him. He always had to have guests. And even in this situation where he was ill, he was weak, he just had a circumcision, so he could have said, you know what, Sarah, we're taking off a few weeks. We're not inviting anyone for the next few weeks. But no, Avram felt you can't just go by without inviting guests. So he actually sat at the entrance of his tent, hoping to see people who he could pull in. Hey, come in, have a drink, wash up, stay overnight, something, right? Now, the problem was it was a very, very, very hot day. It was a good hot day in New Orleans. It was over 100 degrees. It actually says that God specifically made it a very hot day. He took a layer off the sun, like a cover off the sun, to make it such a hot day that no one was outside, no one was traveling, everyone stayed indoors. And suddenly he sees three people. God is visiting him. God is with him. And suddenly he sees from the distance, he sees three people walking. We are told these weren't people, these were angels that God sent. And he runs to these angels. He tells God, hold a minute. we got something more important. We have the guests, which, by the way, teaches us a lesson in having guests. It teaches us that having guests is even greater than being present with the Shekhinah, with God's presence, because Avram left God to get the guests. Anyway, the story continues that he asked these three guests, these three passerbys, to please come in, wash up. I'll prepare some food for you, and that's what he does. He prepares the best, the finest food for these three people. They sit under the tree and they eat, and they ask these guests, ask Avram, "Where's your wife?" Sarah was indoors, and they give a blessing, a beautiful blessing. They reiterated a blessing that God already gave them, that they will bear a child the coming year. And then from there, they went to north to Sodom and Amorah, or Sodom and Gomorrah as in English, where we know that they were very extremely wicked people, and God was extremely unhappy with these people, with their conduct, and God decided he's going to destroy these cities. We know that Lot found, that's where he decided to live. So we have to save Lot. But the angels went to destroy the cities of Sodom. So from there they went up. And God said, listen, I can't allow them to do this without talking to Avram first. So he tells Avram what his plans are. He says, listen, these people that came to you, these are angels. They gave you a blessing for a child. Now they're going to destroy Sodom and to rescue Lot. And Avram says, wait. Hold your horses over here. Not so fast. Wait, maybe there are some righteous people. Maybe we can get together 50 righteous people from these cities, and maybe in their merit, you should save the entire city. And God says, listen, if there were 50 people, maybe, but there isn't. So Avram says maybe 45, maybe 40, maybe 30, maybe 20, maybe 10. And God says, yeah, but there aren't. There is no righteous people in these cities. There's no merits. We are going to destroy it. So Avram realizes, you know what? He tried. It was not successful. The angels go to Sodom. Lot takes them in, which was contrary to their policy because they were not allowed to have guests. He brings them in. The city finds out. They surround his house. He says, "Bring out those guests. How dare you invite guests into your house?" And there's a dialogue back and forth. Either way, the angels tell Lot, we're here to destroy the city. We're saving you and your family. Pack your stuff. Get ready. We're going. They left. It was Lot, his wife, and his two daughters. His sons-in-law did not want to come along. So it was only Lot, his wife, and his two daughters. They leave the city. And as they leave the city is totally turned over. There's fire. It's totally destroyed. The angels tell Lot and his family, do not look back. It's enough that we're saving you. You don't have to see everyone else being killed. Don't look back. The wife of Lot does look back, and because of that, she passes away right there, then and there, and she turns in, as the Torah says, to a pillar of salt. Whatever that means, a pillar of salt. If you go to Israel today, there's numerous places that they look at some large rock that looks like a shape of a person, of a human being, and they say, oh, this is the pillar of salt from the wife of Lot. I think there are 2 or 3 spots in Israel where you may have something similar to that. Either yes, or either it is or it isn't, but the historians definitely have some fun with it. Okay, so where does Lot go? Lot feels that he wants to stay far away from Abraham, so they go to the mountains. So it's Lot and his 2 daughters. They end up in the mountain. And now the question is, what happens now? Lot actually thought, or his daughters thought, that not only was Sodom destroyed, but the entire world was destroyed. They thought it was another flood where they destroyed the entire world. So now it's only their 2 daughters and their father. They felt, wait, what's going to be? How are we going to have children and have the next generation continue populating the world? So the first one says, okay, I'm going to live with my father Lot. They give Lot to drink. He gets drunk. They live together, and she's pregnated. The next night, the other younger sister says, you know what? You did it, I can do the same thing. And that happened again. So they're both pregnated by their father, and they give birth to a child. The first one names his child Moab. Moab from the word from my father. And he was the father of the nation of Moab. And the second daughter gives birth to a son, and she names him Ammon, which means from my nation. And he turns out to be the father of the nation of Ammon. Because the first daughter was less modest. First of all, she came up with the idea. And also, even when she named the child, she named him Moab, from my father. I mean, she wasn't even discreet about it. She wasn't even trying to hide it. So that's why later on, the Jewish people had a much harsher relationship with the Moabites, and they were more nicer, you could say, with the Ammonites, from the people from Ammon. The story continues where Abraham heads south in Israel itself, but they settle in a place called Gerar. And over there, again, there's an issue with Sarah and Avimelech, the king of Gerar, and eventually all gets worked out. And towards the end of the Parsha, we have the birth of Yitzchak, the birth of, finally, this blessing that Abraham and Sarah were waiting for. To have a child comes to fruition. They give a birth to a child. Abraham is 100 years old and Sarai is 90 years old. Sarah is 90 years old. They give birth to a child and they name him Yitzchak, which means laughter, which means happiness and celebration. Obviously, it's a big celebration. And we have the issue with Yitzchak and his older brother Yishmael, where Yishmael is having a bad influence on Yitzchak, so they send Yishmael away, which is a whole saga for itself. And the Parsha concludes with the famous Akedah, where the binding of Isaac, where Abraham is tested for the 10th and final time to bring Isaac as a sacrifice. He's willing to do it, and eventually God says, I don't mean this literally, and Isaac is obviously saved. So that is a general overview of the Parsha. Just give me one quick, we'll do a little break. I'll be back in about 30 seconds. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, so that is the overview of the Parsha. Now, I'd just like to kind of focus and talk a little bit about Avraham and his sensitivity to others. And you find this in two separate areas of the Parsha. Two separate areas. Right at the beginning of the Parsha, we see this, and with the story of Sodom as well. So we'll start with right at the beginning of the Parsha. Right at the beginning of the Parsha, we have Avraham, and God himself is visiting with Avraham. And what do we say? That Avraham has such a yearning, an urge to invite people home. So he told God, wait, look, I see people. I need to run after them and invite them in. But let's think about this for a moment. It's one thing to tell God I have something more important. I want to invite someone to my house. But then it is Avram noticed the other people. Even the fact that Avram noticed other people itself is already something. We get so involved in something good, something positive. We're so involved in it, right? It's an amazing thing. We don't even think about others. We don't even think about something outside of our world, right? Imagine we're so excited about it. We're making a wedding. We're something very important in our lives is happening. We're thinking about ourselves. We're thinking about our family. We're thinking about the occasion. We don't have time to think about others at this moment. Imagine God is present. God came to visit the sick, right? You're so involved in that moment to think about another person. Avram had the sensitivity that even while involved in something very important as God himself visiting, he had the sensitivity to notice another person. And we also we come in contact with so many people. And of course, if someone ever asks us to do them a favor, of course we do favors to others. But then there is noticing, having that sensitivity to notice a need of another person. Not when they're coming to ask, or not someone says, hey, someone points it out, you know that Shmerel really needs a help, maybe you want to give them a call. Of course I give them a call. But did you notice it on your own? Did you have the sensitivity to realize that someone is at need? That's something we can learn from Avram. And another point we can learn also from the story of Sodom. In the story of Sodom, we know that they were extremely wicked people, to the point where God had to destroy the entire city. They were known not to give anyone anything. And when someone would come to the city and ask for some charity, each person would give them one coin, and they would all write their name on the coin. They would give them the coin, let's say the dollar, right? Everyone gives them a dollar. They write their name on the dollar bill. Everyone gives the dollar bill to this person, and now this person has what a generous city. Everyone's giving me a dollar. It's amazing. They go to buy bread. No one would sell them bread. That was the rule. You're not allowed to sell bread or any food to an outsider. If you're not local, you don't live here, you have no right to buy food from us. So they had all the money. They had no way to purchase food. They would starve to death. Oh, they died. Now everyone will come back and take their coin back. That's what happened. One time, there was this young girl who really felt bad for this person who came, and she saw that this person is going to starve to death. So while she would take her jug of water to the well to fill up water, she secretly would hide a little piece of bread in it, and she would kind of throw it to him as she would pass by. Like this, no one would notice. So this person was there, and he was not starving to death. He was, day in, day out, he was still alive. And the people in the city realized, ooh, something's happening. Who is feeding this man? Who is going against the policy of the cities? And finally, they realized it's this woman, it's this young girl. So what do? These are very vicious people. So they smear, they put oil all over her body, and they tied her up to the roof of a building, of a house, and the bees came and killed her through stinging her so many times. This is what the Torah says. If you look at verse, when the Torah describes what God was saying, how terrible the people of Sodom are. So the Torah says in verse 21, on page 101, this is chapter 18, verse 21. It says like this: I will descend. This is God speaking to talking about how terrible the people of Sodom is. I will descend now and see if they have actually caused the outcry which has reached me. Then there will be destruction. If not, I will know how to punish them. What is this outcry? Okay, it's interesting because in the previous verse, in verse 20, it says, since the outcry of Sodom and Gomorrah has become great, and since their sin has become very great. So in Hebrew, their sin is plural, which means the sin of all the people of Sodom is great. But then in the verse 21, the outcry is written in singular, haktsa'akasa, her cry, her outcry. So it's their sin and her outcry. What's going on over here? It's the outcry of one person. And that's what is explained. We're talking about this one girl that was killed viciously. Her cry pierced God's ears and says, wow, I have to do something about this. And who does God choose to talk to first? He speaks to Abraham first. Why Abraham? What does Abraham have to do with this? What, God needs Abraham's advice? No. God was trying to tell this Sodomites, look yourself in the mirror, see what you're doing, see what you're doing in contrast to the way Abraham works. Avraham doesn't know you, has nothing to do with you. He lives far away from you. He hears that I want to destroy the people of Sodom. What does he do? He stands up and he prays on your behalf. And he's arguing with God. Please, maybe you can find merits, maybe 50, 40, 30, something. How can you do this? He can't sleep at night. He doesn't know these people. These are wicked people. But he's always praying for another person. Maybe we could find a lighter punishment. Maybe we could figure, maybe they could do teshuvah. Maybe we could influence them to inspire them and to repent. And maybe they could change their ways, something, right? He cares for another person. The people of Sodom, their issue was that they had this theory, each their own. Each person thinks about themselves. Why should I care about another person? I'm happy. I have what I need. I have a family. I have a livelihood. I can support myself. I'm healthy. I'm good. Why should I care about you? You should care about you. I care about me. What does the Mishnah tell us in the Ethics of the Fathers? That someone who says, what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, that's not good. That's a midah, that's a characteristic of people from Sodom. They said the same thing. What's mine is mine, what's yours is yours. You live your life, I live my life, and we are going to part in peaceful ways, right? I don't want to put down any of the New Yorkers here, but the people in New York, I know myself. I lived next to my neighbor for 30 years. I haven't spoken to him a word, right? Yeah, I'm joking over here, Marty. Don't get so excited. But the point is that here in New Orleans, we know that you live three blocks away, and you see each other, and you stop your car or you stop while you're walking your dog, and you have a schmooze and you talk, right? We know that it's not about me, it's not about you. It's about together. It's all of us together. The sad truth is, I can't say the sad truth, but in America, in the U.S. law, there is no law that tells us that I have to save another person. If I'm walking down the street and someone's dying, someone's hurt, there is no law that says I need to stop and help them. I don't have to call 911. I don't have to stop and see if I can help. I don't have to pick them up. I don't have to, whatever, I don't have to help them. I'm allowed to live my life as is. I have no obligation from a legal standpoint to help others. In Israel, by the way, about 10 or 8 years ago, they passed the law that you do have to help. Unless you're putting your life in danger, like you don't have to jump into the water to save someone. But if you just pass by and you see someone is in need, and you could even call for help, you could stop and do something simple to help them. There is a law, you have to help them. But in America, you don't have to help them. In fact, the unfortunate truth is that sometimes there are such extreme cases where people don't help, and there's nothing you can do about it. There was a case in the news a number of years ago where there were these teenagers who were filming on their phone someone struggling in the water. It was a small lake. It wasn't a very big lake. It was like a park lake that someone fell in, and they were struggling. You saw clearly they're struggling, and they filmed it. They videoed it on their phone, and they were laughing, and they're just watching. They literally watched a person drown. The person died, and the police had a very hard time finding ways to press charges, because legally you don't have to help another person. You don't even have to call for help. You do not have to call 911 and say, hey, there's someone drowning. Of course, you don't have to jump in to help someone. Later, they found that once a person dies, if you see someone who's dead, then you have to report it. So they found reasons to press charges. And perhaps it's a good reason there's no law, because perhaps this is something that we should be educating our children to do this voluntarily. A person should have the understanding that if you're able to help, you should help. Not because you have to help. You don't have to force a person to do things. Like, you don't have to be forced to eat. You eat because you know you have to eat. You don't have to be forced to help another person because you should be doing this voluntarily. You should be helping other people. And sometimes it can backfire. When you're forced to do something, then people have a resentment. They don't want to do it, right? Why should I do it? Because, don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to live my life. But I'm not talking about the legalities of things here. But obviously, we as Jews, we know we have a responsibility. It's not about rights, it's about responsibility. And our responsibility is to help other people. The people of Sodom didn't have that responsibility. They were only talking about rights. What's my rights? My rights are I'm able to live a peaceful life. Don't talk to me about charity. Don't talk to me about helping others. I'm not interested. And don't make me feel guilty about it. So therefore, you shouldn't either do it. Because if you do it, then I'm going to feel guilty that I'm not doing it. So therefore, the rule was no one is allowed to help others. Right? That was Sodom. And Avram obviously was the total opposite. So God specifically wanted the Sodomites to know that look at Avram, look at how he lives his life. In total contrast to the way you live your life. You have to have the sensitivity to think about others, to help others. I want to conclude with the story. And the story is a story that I just read last week, and it blew me away. The story happened in 1972. There's a Rabbi Drizin. Rabbi Chaim Drizin moves to Berkeley, California. He's sent there by the Rebbe. He's what we call a shaliach. He's sent by a Chabad emissary to Northern California, to Berkeley, the Sacramento area, to help young students or help Jewish people get involved in Judaism. At that point in the 70s, perhaps some of you remember this, it was an era where many people were kind of young students or young teenagers were leaving home, and they were kind of disconnecting from their parents' generation. The old school people, we're new, we have a mind of our own, we're going on our own path. And many of them came from Jewish homes, traditional homes, even religious homes, and they kind of disconnected themselves from their parents and from their families, and parents were very worried. And many of them ended up in Berkeley. So Rabbi Drizin was getting a lot of these calls from parents. Please look out for my daughter, look out for my son. They're in this town, they're in that town. Give them a visit, check in on them, please. And that's what he was doing. He used to be in his car every day, literally just going from place to place, just checking in on some Jewish students. Well, one day, it was a Friday afternoon, he gets a call from Mr. Friedman from New York. Mr. Friedman is literally crying on the phone. He says, please, I have a daughter. Her name is Dina. And she recently met up with this non-Jewish man who is like a reborn Christian, just born again Christian. Yeah, I'm sorry, thank you. A born again Christian, and they're together. They're planning on getting married in Hawaii. They stopped off in California for a little bit, and Saturday night they have flights out to Hawaii to get married. Please speak to my daughter Dina. See what you could do for her. It's Friday afternoon, and he asks, "Okay, where are they?" And he says, "They are in a place called Emigrant Gap." Have any of you have ever heard of Emigrant Gap? Well, neither has Rabbi Drizin. And he says, Emigrant Gap. Where is that? He says, oh, I think I remember. If you pass Sacramento, he remembers seeing a sign on the I-80. It can't be too far because Berkeley to Sacramento is about an hour. So an hour drive, an hour, 10-minute drive, that's where it is. Okay, he looks at the clock. He has about 3 hours to Shabbos. He says, okay, he thinks he can do it. He calls his wife, tells his wife, I'm heading out to meet an important mission. I'll be back before Shabbos. So his wife is hesitant, and she says, okay, but you remember that we have a very important program on Saturday nights. You can't get stuck up there for Shabbos. Make sure you're back before Shabbos. Yeah, of course. And so he heads out, he heads north, and he's driving. He gets to Sacramento. And after Sacramento, he's looking around to find that sign for Emigrant Gap, and he doesn't see it. Drives another few minutes, he doesn't see it. So it's obviously before the days of cell phones or GPSs or anything like that. He stops off on the side of the road at a gas station, and he asks, where's Emigrant Gap? He says, Emigrant Gap? That's about 75 miles north. He says, Oigevald, 75 miles. He looks at the clock. He has just about an hour and a half to Shabbos. He decides he's going to go for it. He calls his wife. He says, listen, it's not looking good. But this is what I got to do. There's no going back. For some reason he felt he can't just leave. He has to meet this girl before Shabbos. So he heads back on the road, drives another hour or so, and suddenly he sees the sign, immigrant gap population 13. This is like rural California. This is in the mountains, literally in the middle of nowhere. It's a small little town, literally a small little town. He has 30 minutes to Shabbos. He pulls into the first gas station. He says, "Do you know of a Dina Friedman?" "Oh, I think I know who they are. They're down the road. It's about 20-minute drive. 20-minute drive. What's he gonna do for Shabbos?" So he goes into the convenience store. He finds some sardines. He finds some kosher food he's able to put together for his Shabbos meals, and he heads to the house. He comes to the house. He knocks on the door, and he opens up. He opens the door, and he's very excited to see a rabbi. He says, "Wow, Rabbi, what are you here for?" And he starts talking to him, and he sees Dina in the back, and he sees Dina's eyes bulging at him, really like daggers, really upset. "You found me." She realizes right away who sent him, and she doesn't say a word. She walks out. And the rabbi tells the guy, he says, "Listen, I know it's kind of the last minute. I'm a rabbi. It's almost Shabbos. Would it be okay if I stayed here overnight?" "Oh, sure. We have a sleeping bag and not a problem." He comes in. He unloads his car, whatever he had with him, some clothing, and he starts talking about Judaism. And this guy is very excited about his newfound Christianity, and he's talking about that, and he's talking about Judaism, and trying to kind of steer the conversation towards Dina, but Dina is never really interested in getting involved, and he's really enjoying this rabbi who came to visit. They stay up all night. He talks to him about, Dina is a Jew, and she should really explore, before she comes to a new religion, she should really explore her own religion, explore her Judaism. And he says, "Okay, that's wonderful. Where could she go to learn more about Judaism?" And he says, "Oh, there's a new a school, especially for girls who want to get more involved in studying about Judaism in Minnesota. Beis Chana opened up recently at that point. There's a wonderful program." And he's like, "Yeah, sure. After our wedding, maybe we'll spend a few months in Minnesota to study more about Judaism." And as they're talking, again, the entire Shabbos goes by. Dina has no interest in talking. He's really interested in talking to this rabbi. And that's what the whole Shabbos goes by, talking about, either he's talking about Christianity, and the rabbi's talking about Judaism, and they have a wonderful Shabbos together. Shabbos is over. He realizes, okay, he got to leave. He feels that interesting experience, but what a failure. He came to try to inspire Dina, but it seemed like she's like cold like a rock. She's not interested in having even a conversation. And so he gets into his car, says goodbye to them, and he turns on the engine. And as he turns on the engine, he sees the door behind him open. He looks back, and who's there? It's Dina. Dina's there with her backpack, and she sits into the car. She gets into the car. She closes the door. Rabbi Drizin says he knew better than to ask why are you here? But he just starts driving. About 20 minutes into it, it's silent. About 20 minutes into it, Dina opens up and she says, "Rabbi, you don't know why I'm here, do you?" The rabbi says, "No, I don't. You want to tell me?" And she says, "Listen, when I was a child living in New York, my mother passed away. My father was very concerned about me. How is he going to raise me without a mother? How is my Jewish life going to look like?" And so my father took me to the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe in Brooklyn. And we had a private audience with him. And my father was speaking to him about me, about raising me as a single parent, and about my Judaism. And the Rebbe told him that if you're ever concerned about your daughter's Judaism, you could always call someone from Chabad. Okay. I remember hearing this, she says, when I was a child, maybe 10, 15 years earlier. "Tell me," she turns to a rabbi, "did the Rebbe send you to me?" And Rabbi Drizin says, "No, I actually had no clue about this. All I got was a call from your father, and I decided to come." Well, Dina says, "Well, let me tell you something. you must be fulfilling what the Rebbe told my father many years ago, that Chabad will come and save me. Because I was very inspired with all that I heard over Shabbos. I didn't, take part in the conversation, but I was listening. And I decided I do want to explore more of my Judaism. And so he brought her back to Berkeley. From there, he paid a ticket to go straight to Minnesota, to that girls' yeshiva, and she spent there many months. And she eventually got married to a nice Jew and is raising a beautiful family today in Israel, thanks to Rabbi Drizzen. So I read the story last week. I'm like, wow, it's a beautiful story. And I feel like it's very connected to this week's Parsha, the idea of giving yourself to another person. It's not about me. Rabbi Drizzen could have said, listen, it's Friday afternoon. I got Shabbos. I got a program Saturday night. I can't. This is just not possible. And you know what? No one will have anything against you. It makes sense, right? It makes sense. You can't just get up whenever you get a call and just put everything aside and do something for others, right? You have to be responsible as well. But when someone does that, it's like, wow, someone is willing to forgo their own being comfortable, their own giving yourself over to another person. That was Abraham. That's what we learned from Avram. The sensitivity to others, to think about others. It's not about me. It's about my responsibility to make the world a better place through acts of goodness and kindness. So that is my little thought for this week. And good to see you all. And God willing, we'll see you again next week.
Thank you.
Thank you.